Not only is it proper and right for wisdom to be recycled, but I think it's rather vital and necessary. Well, quite simply because there's not enough of it to go around. We can't afford to lose any wisdom. And so I got to thinking the other day about the recycling of wisdom. And I really don't know that that's a proper characterization, but for lack of a better one, I'm going to stick with it. It's really more of passing it along. You start thinking about those kinds of things when you get to be my age, when you get to be older in life, and there are kids and there are grandkids, and you start thinking, and it's not a self-centered thing, at least for me. It's not thinking about myself. It's thinking about the things that life has taught you, and it's thinking about your responsibility to pass on the wisdom that life and the world have taught you, and that other people taught you. I think about these things quite a bit, and I began to think about these things, I don't know how long ago, as it relates to story. That's a popular subject today. Story. People are hanging their hat on, I'm a storyteller. I help people craft a good story. I see that. Here's what it's like. You go and you buy a car, a particular make of car and a particular color of car, and you don't notice any of those cars being, well, you notice a few being on the road, but you don't notice that many. The minute you buy that car and you drive it off the lot, everywhere you look, you see people driving the exact same car that you've got. You notice how that happens? That's how story is happening for me. I know where some of this comes from, and it comes from this book, and this is a great book, by the way. Donald Miller is a Portland-based, faith-based author, A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. I've got to tell you that for the year 2010, it certainly is in the top tier of books that I read. So says I, Sir Reads a Lot. Good book. What I Learned While Editing My Life is the subtitle. A Million Miles in 1,000 Years chronicles Miller's rare opportunity to edit his life into a great story, to reinvent himself so nobody shrugs their shoulders when the credits roll. That's the premise of the book. Donald Miller is a good writer, I think, and I enjoyed the book a lot. But it's not all that new. It's not all that novel, and I don't think he would even claim so. He crafted it in his own way. He put his spin on it, and that's great. That's what he should have done. And I don't know why I'm somewhat intrigued by people who look at it as though it's just this eureka, never thought of this before. And it's not that I care, it's just it finally dawned on me that what I'm witnessing here is I'm witnessing the recycling of wisdom. I'm witnessing passing it on. I'm witnessing in this timeline of life where there are people on one end dropping off because they die, and on the other end there are people coming in because they're born. That is life. And then all along the timeline, somewhere between birth and death, well, somewhere on that line is us. And some of us are at a spot where there's countless things that we've never been exposed to before. There's things that we're completely unaware of. There's wisdom that we've not yet learned. And so when people do learn it, when people do hear for the first time, live your life like a story, make it a good story. It's just this, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And you see the reaction, and you know, I'm admittedly jaded There's no question. I'm admittedly cynical. There's no question. It doesn't make me a bad guy. Well, okay, maybe. But I look at, I see people, who come into some awareness of wisdom, and I'm just intrigued. I'm intrigued by the reaction. I'm intrigued by the notion that this wisdom has never ever existed on the planet before. And I guess here's my thought. There are tons of things that have never existed before. There's tons of technology that's never existed before, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about wisdom. I'm talking about universal wisdom. I'm talking about collective wisdom. I'm talking about individual wisdom. There are things that we learn. There are things that other generations taught us. I think of some things that in the business world that people hang their hat on as being new and unique and remarkable and novel. And I look in my library, and I've got some books written in the 40s and the 50s. And I'm not naive enough to believe that those books dated in the 40s and the 50s. I'm not naive enough to believe that, okay, that was the first record. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Let me tell you, at the turn of the century, there were some pretty bright merchants out there. There are some things in retailing that go back centuries of people who were able to be good merchants. But here's what I know, and in this I am not jaded. We come into knowledge, we come into, better yet, wisdom, the application of knowledge. And we come into it for the first time, and it's for some, it's a little bit like discovering a brand new musical artist. You've done that. If you're a music fan, you've done that. If you're not a music fan, I'm sorry for you. But we've discovered somebody, and we're like, man, you got to hear this. And we latch onto it, and we become stark raving fans if it's somebody that we like. And people do that today with various things, various aspects of wisdom. And some people are really good at passing it on. Some people are really good at, well, if the subject is telling stories. Seth Godin comes to mind. Seth Godin, there are people that they hang on his every word. I don't know that he would much want that, but I rather think he relishes it more than he doesn't, and he's a bright guy. He's a thought provoker. And I mean that as the highest compliment, because I think it's a great art, and he has it. But it's intriguing to me to watch people who, he comes out with a book, and it's the book they quote, it's the book they cite, they blog about it, they podcast about it, they go on and on and on and on and on about it, and they eat, drink, and sleep it until he writes the next one. And then it's, oh man, this just, I like the enthusiasm. I like the enthusiasm. I don't sit back and mock any of this, by the way. So I don't want you to get the wrong idea. It's not a mockery of it. It's just the realization that you've got people on this timeline, and they're coming into this knowledge for the first time. And it's intriguing to me to see the reactions of some. Not everybody acts in the same animated way as others. But what this is, in my opinion, this is the recycling of wisdom. This is passing it on. This is a generation passing on what they have learned. This is a generation coming to grips with the wisdom that they have learned. And, well, it's best illustrated this way, and this is how I'm going to wrap this up. You've heard that adage that the older the kids get, the smarter the parents become. Because as our kids get older, they begin to learn and understand the things that we tried to teach them back when they were young and stupid, and they gave us a hard time. And all of a sudden it dawns on them, yeah, Mom and Dad, they're not as stupid as I thought they were. The parents just suddenly, as the kids get older, the parents suddenly y'all just don't seem as stupid as y'all once did. It's not that the parents have suddenly gotten a big dose of wisdom, it's the kids have. And as the kids have come into greater understanding of things, they now look at the parents in a little different light. And for the parents, speaking as a parent and now speaking as a grandparent, I can tell you it's cool. It's just kind of cool to look and see. It's kind of cool to look and see your grown kids who are now having kids of their own. It's kind of cool to see them come into their own and understand. And they don't see it the way you see it, for sure. But it's kind of cool to look at them and to see, yeah, okay, it's clicking. Now it's clicking. And that's what this is. It's watching the world collectively in various stages of clicking, getting it. It's the recycling of wisdom. It's the passing it on. And I think no matter who you are, no matter where you are on this timeline of life, I think you bear the responsibility to pass it on. I think you bear the responsibility to help somebody else see what you see. I think you bear the responsibility to pass on the wisdom that life has taught you. I mean, come on, let's don't make people learn it all the hard way. We didn't have to learn it all the hard way. I don't care who you are. Okay, well, we walked uphill both ways to school, barefoot in the snow. We've all heard that. I've said it before, and it bears repeating. I've not yet met the self-made man or the self-made woman. Everybody owes somebody. We've all gotten help. Hopefully, we have all rendered help and assistance, and we should do more of that. If there's one thing about social media that is off-putting to a guy like me, it's the constant, never-ending self-promotion. It is the me, 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 me. And in spite of the fact that all of the pundits and all the gurus say, don't do that, it doesn't work. Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I could name you some names, I won't, who do nothing but promote themselves and promote themselves and promote themselves, and it works. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Doesn't mean I have to enjoy it. Doesn't even necessarily mean I have to subject myself to it, but man, what a lost opportunity when we could help somebody, when we could pass it on, when we could help somebody see the wisdom, when we could lend to helping him. I'm real fond of Steve Farber's work and this whole mentoring thing. And I've been a fan of that since I was a young person, because I was a young person who sought out older people. And when I say older people, I'm talking about when I was in my 20s, seeking out guys that were in their mid to late 60s. I'm talking a big generation difference. People who came from an absolutely different place in life and in time than I did. And those were the guys that I really sought out. And I have always sought out people who were 15, 20 years ahead of me. I've not just sought out people who were 5 years ahead of me. No, give me the next generation. I want the next generation because they've got wisdom that I'd kind of like to get, and I'd kind of like to not have to go through all the crap to get there, if I can help it. I think it's great, and I think it's kind of cool to see people latch onto it, even though I am somewhat intrigued with how animated and how people tend to, from my vantage point, tend to have a little bit of naivete in believing, it's brand new. This is brand new. This is never before. Live your life as a story? You're kidding. I mean, that's not diminishing Donald Miller's work, by the way, not in the least. I just find it kind of interesting. It's hoops weekend. On the flat panel has been NHL hockey, and I'm a yellow-bellied channel flipper. Been going back and forth between that and hoops. Still a hockey guy. Recycle wisdom. Think about the wisdom that you have learned. Think about the things that you have learned and the things that you can pass on, whether to your children, whether to grandchildren, whether somebody else's kids. Somebody in your life needs the wisdom that you possess. Pass it on. I think it's a good thing to do. I think it's a solid work for all of us. Have a good weekend. See you.